All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 175. We decided to do an emergency show to talk about the news that Nick Saban is retiring. I think it took everybody from surprise. So here we are. If you'd like to join the conversation, you go ahead and hit request and we'll hear from you. But I mean, again, the news that is obviously spreading around or so is Nick Saban, arguably the greatest coach in modern history, probably the greatest coach of all time. I think you could argue the greatest coach of all time, has decided to hang it up at age 72 after a great season. What was remarkable to me is looking around, even some of the Alabama insiders, the people that really go out of their way to cover that team year after year, were surprised by this. So here we have Nick Saban, the terror of Toledo, the Marshal of Michigan State, the Lion of LSU, the Ayatollah of Alabama, the only coach to win 7 national titles in the Poll era, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU. Incredible record, 292, 71, and 1, because he's coached long enough to have a tie. 11 SEC titles, 9 at Alabama, 2 at LSU. Crimson Tide have won every season since 2008. He's already in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. It's only a matter of time before he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. 5-time SEC Coach of the Year, 2 times as Walter Camp Coach of the Year, 2 times as AP College Football Coach of the Year, 2 times as the Bear Bryant Award winner. He's had 4 Heisman Trophy winners: Mark Ingram II in 2009, Derrick Henry in 2015, Devontae Smith in 2020, and most recently Bryce Young in 2021. Frankly, it looked like heading into next season, Jalen Milroe would be one of those potential next candidates. Just an incredible coach. The ability to be the ultimate CEO style head coach, the ability to recruit, because if you've read about him, his entire focus is on bringing the best players in and getting the right assistants, the right coordinators to make the most of them. And his ability to evolve with the game. I mean, arguably, that's one of the things that would hold back, for example, Dabo Swinney from being a candidate. You know, I see someone wants to join us, and we welcome any of you who want to join us. I'm going to add you, Riddell or Brit's Legit. I'm not sure exactly which one to use. So, yeah, what's on your mind? Feel free to unmute. It's in the bottom left.
Hi. Yeah, I just, sorry, my dog's barking. I was shocked today for a multitude of reasons. One, also obviously being Nick Saban retiring. 2, having all of the people in my office that are not Alabama fans be so ecstatic. And 3, now that we've got one of our former commits decommitting, is just sad.
I can imagine. Where I have to just ask. So, like, what schools are these coworkers from, or at least where do they hold their allegiances?
So, majority are Tennessee fans. So it just on Teams.
Oh, this is Christmas right now.
On Teams today. It was just all oranges. This afternoon, and I literally told my supervisor, I was like, if this is real and this isn't fake news, I'm gonna have to take my debridement. I'm not gonna be able to work for the rest of the week.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, this looks totally real. I remember when the news started popping up. I mean, you know, some of us were on a Slack channel and we were looking at it and we're like, no way. And then everyone started looking carefully around and we're like, this is the real deal. This is almost as surprising as when, you know, suddenly they revealed USC and UCLA were going to the Big Ten and everyone was like, wait, when was this happening? You know, one thing, and I remember we had a guy covering the Rose Bowl and he said at Media Day, Nick Saban was actually like oddly nice to everybody. Like he just seemed more relaxed. He seemed like in a good mood, and people were like, he was like, "This isn't kind of what I was expecting." And you know, he said to me, he's like, "I wonder if he's thinking like, is he just kind of enjoying the moment? Is he just with older age, getting a chance to enjoy the process, or is he getting ready to retire?" And now I'm like, well, looks like it might have been the latter. I mean, no one was going to like assert that at the time, but now he's looking back and he's like, maybe that was it. Maybe he was thinking like, I want to go out on top. I mean, he said that before. He didn't want to overstay, but
Right.
This is remarkable.
I know. It's just so sad. Like, I just hate that was our last game with him. It's like, do you think Seth would have snapped the ball better if he knew?
Well, I'm going to tell you, imagine he's thinking I'm the reason why.
Oh, no. Yeah, I hope not. I mean, it's not all on Seth. There was a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
coaching errors, I think, in
I
that
mean, if
game.
it's an overtime game, like there were a lot of things that could have made that game turn around. I mean, the only thing, I mean, I was covering the national championship. I literally just got back from Houston, so I was laughing like, okay, time to do another Twitter space. But I was just thinking like if that overtime game had gone differently, would we be crowning Alabama right now and talking
Oh,
about like
100%. 110%. Yeah. And
because
I'm
yeah,
sure
that
that's why he even stuck with it like through postseason was like he wanted to see the guys go and try and get them to the final game. It's just sad that that's how it had to end.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and giving your thoughts on this. And
Yeah, of course.
you brought it up. Yeah, the 30-day transfer window is now open to all Alabama players who weren't in the portal because that's the rules. Once you have a coaching change, they have that opportunity. I'm sure Alabama's going to probably keep most of this together. I'd be shocked. Um, Although, man, being the person to follow Nick Saban, that's a tough one. That's like the person who followed John Wooden at UCLA. No one wants to be that person.
Yeah, it
Um,
is tough. I would love to see. I mean, we're gonna see eventually who it is, but I would give it maybe a couple days before they announce anything. If days, maybe not, maybe weeks. But I think this is just a time for us to just recollect on everything that Coach Saban did give to us and was able to just have us experience as a fan base. I mean, he is like the definition of current college football. He literally was the best ever. So I'm just thankful that I got to be a part of going to school while he coached there, just grow up knowing this kind of college football. It's been incredible.
Absolutely, and yeah, it's a stunner, and I do wonder like this is going to be a moment for Greg Byrne. Like I'm sure Coach Saban had given him at least somewhat of a heads up that hey, this is coming at some point, and I'm sure he's always known that you never know. I mean, anything can happen to anyone. I mean, I remember like long before all of our times, one of the greatest head coaches in the 40s, he just died of a heart attack suddenly. So you just never know. Like suddenly you could just the next day. I mean, this is at least a, going out on your own terms, still
Mm-hmm.
healthy, can now do whatever he wants, travel with Miss Terry wherever she wants to go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, this is tough and I mean, I realize, I'm 44, so I remember when Nick Saban rose. I remember paying attention when he was at Michigan State. LSU hired him, and then like, oh wow, he turned LSU around. The NFL journey for a half minute and going and turning Alabama. I mean, Alabama. For those who don't remember, like Alabama was just languishing for so long. I
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they hired Mike Price. That was like one of the greatest fiascos in a coach just nerfing his own career in about 4 days. I mean, we've seen things before, and so again, like to see going from there to where they became. I mean, it's astonishing to have somebody actually go toe to toe with legacy with Bear Bryant and arguably do better than him. It's just like you didn't think that was feasible
Right.
at the time, and here we are. But yeah,
Hopefully, we're in a better spot now than when Bear Bryant left, so we don't have to go through that rut again.
yeah,
We're in a pretty good foundation
yeah.
dynasty era.
The keys to this vehicle are tremendous. Probably better than even the Mercedes dealerships he has. It's like a Rolls Royce he's just created for folks. But
Yeah,
thanks so much for joining us. It was great
of
having you as part of
course.
the conversation.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Ski Master Murphy, what's up? What's on your mind?
Yeah, as a Michigan fan, it's like now it feels like I'm on a roller coaster from like being a Michigan fan and also being like a pure college football fan. It's like it feels great winning the national championship, but now it feels like we probably ruined like what could have potentially been one of the greatest moments in college football history of Nick Saban just retiring with 8 going out on top. And I mean 6 seemed like a long shot, but seems a little more feasible now for someone else to do. But 8 seems like if he was able to retire with 8 on the podium saying goodbye to everyone, because now people are going back to that clip of him and Kirby in the SEC championship, and it looks like Nick was sort of like you said he was being nice at the Rose. It sort of seems like yeah, this is sort of like his swan song. So if there was a chance to see him out there and just holding up that trophy, it probably would have been the best thing possible.
Imagine if he did hold up the trophy and that's when he announces it and no one expects it. Like, I retire, and just drops the mic. Like, you literally see ESPN, like you see everyone in the whole stadium like gasp. But no, I think so. That would have been a stunner, but I think he was willing to just say, you know what, there's a moment, because I think also you always wonder if this is how he had planned it. Like, I'm just going to see how this season plays out. He probably was wise enough to know, like, okay, if you don't want to get stuck in the, well, okay, I got so close this season, I'll try it again next season. I'll try it again next season, and then suddenly, maybe things start to not go so well. So I think I'm amazed at I'm not amazed because it's Nick Saban, but I admire the discipline to just say, you know what, if he was planning to do it this season, cool. Yeah, I mean, I still remember him talking about how much he was proud of this particular team, and people were like, "Yeah, it's great. You guys turned it around after Texas in that kind of weird USF game to kind of become domineering and win out, have another perfect SEC season." But yeah, no, I mean, all the parts start to fit together. It's been fascinating. This is just, the odds of this are funny, but there's lots of things that get posted on our CFB, and the two of the more recent topics right before Nick Saban announces his retirement. This poor Alabama fan had just posted this whole thing where he's like, next year is Alabama's year. He was paying attention to like the pattern. He's like, 2015 national championship, 2016 no national championship, 2017 national championship, then 2 years of no national championship, then a national championship. Then he saw it, well, now it's going to be 3 years of a no national championship, and then a national championship. And then within like 15 minutes, Nick Saban's announcement of his the story broke. And he's like, oh my God, I'm the one that killed Nick Saban's career. But another person actually, the other post that made people amused was like, again, moments before this was announced, a fan had written, if you could write the most entertaining, wild script possible for next season, what details would you include? And needless to say, the conversation in that post quickly turned to, well, it's funny you were to ask. But here we are. Let's see. There's other people who want to join the conversation. We'll let some folks up here. You've all been so patient. I'll try to get to as many of you as I can. Let's see here. Yukon Cornelius. Yukon Cornelius, you're up. Just feel free to unmute. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm a recent grad of Alabama. Grew up in Big Ten country, so I found out from the group chat of everyone dancing on my grave here. But I remember a couple years back when I was still down in Tuscaloosa, someone showed me a screenshot of a bank account. And obviously I was drinking in a bar at the time, so don't remember exactly, but it was at least 120 million. I want to say 180 million. And they said, hey, guess what this is for? I was like, I don't know, what? It was strictly to find Saban's replacement. So I think we can pretty much back up the Brinks truck for whoever we want. Now, I know there's some untouchables. D'Amico Ryan, I've seen thrown around. I think he's got a good thing going on in Houston. And then Harbaugh, obviously, just won a natty. That would be insane. If he goes anywhere, he would definitely go up to the NFL. So I want to get your thoughts, like Dan Lanning, right? We all saw the pregame speech versus Colorado. It was electric. I loved it. But I mean, he's just so new. He's so unproven. Then Lane Kiffin is an absolute wild card, who I would love for strictly entertainment value. But I don't know. Those are the clear top two contenders that both kind of have.
Yeah, no. I agree with you, and it's fascinating to see how this goes. I think active NFL coaches are pretty much not going to. They come up, but I doubt they're going to happen. Harbaugh, I'm almost, it's funny because we've been kind of talking about him, pretty recently. And I was in the press conference at the national championship afterwards and listening to him talk about it. Like, well, he never denies that he was interested in the NFL, but clearly now that he's won the national championship that he set out to do, I think his only goal after this is to win the Super Bowl, having been to the Super Bowl, but actually winning it. So I think he's almost certainly off the table. He doesn't need it. If he wanted to stay in college, Michigan will happily let him stay there, no matter what comes out of the off the field stuff. It's interesting you mentioned it because there are names being thrown around right now, and again, it's so early. Dan Lanning has been out there. Certainly, he's got a $20 million buyout, but honestly, Alabama, they're going to find the money for that. No matter who it is, they'll find the buyout. And the only reason why Dan Lanning has that buyout is because Oregon's been burned before when Willie Taggart, remember him, went to Florida State. Remember when that happened? And Oregon obviously lost Mario Cristobal to Miami. So that's why they have that buyout there. But I mean, any determined team can do it. Texas A&M has proven that, there's crazy money in all of the top level of sports. So that wouldn't even be challenging their particular level of this. Steve Sarkisian's come up, although I'd be surprised. He's got Texas is a competitor. I mean, they are a peer. I would be shocked if he were to leave. Dabo used to be the name, but I think Dabo Swinney's kind of over the last couple of years sort of soured it a little bit. I mean, the fact that he's so almost curmudgeonly refusing to evolve, as much as fast as
Dabo. Anyone but Dabo.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I always compared the two because Nick Saban would say when a new rule would come up and he wasn't thrilled with it, Nick Saban's approach would be like, look, this is a dumb rule. You guys don't want it, but if you do change it, he's always basically say like, you're going to regret it because I'm going to be the best at it. That would always be how he'd phrase it when things like the portal and NIL. It's like, all right, that's what you want to do. We'll play the game. And they're recruiting. Alabama can absolutely play the game at whatever level you put it at, especially when Nick Saban was in charge. Kalen DeBoer's been out there as a Washington option. I think maybe he's particularly new. He, at least with Dan Lanning, he's an SEC background guy. He at least would plug in more. I think Kalen DeBoer would be a little bit of a wild card. I would be surprised there. Mike Norvell at Florida State has certainly come up. That would be an interesting one. Imagine you just, you went undefeated in the ACC and you couldn't get into the playoff. Imagine taking the head coaching job of the team that got the spot that you thought you deserved. I mean, it would be an interesting line. Lane Kiffin's a fascinating one. I completely agree because I remember last year he had said this. So I looked up the quote in July of 2022. What could you possibly do right if you don't win the national championship everywhere? You're going to follow Nick Saban, Alabama? No, that would not be a good decision for anyone. So, that's what he said. Of course, plenty of coaches have said things and made big pronouncements that they're not going to, leave LSU for the Dolphins or leave the Dolphins to coach Alabama. I mean, coaches, that's how they are. I mean, you're committed to the role until you take the next one. So, plausibly, Kiffin could be someone out there. There have been some other ridiculous names out there. Someone threw out, I think it was Pete Thamel. I almost wonder, was he trying to round out the list? Because he threw out Marcus Freeman. I'm like, no, he hasn't made enough of an impact at Notre Dame for that. And James Franklin, I'm like, his agent just seems to get him injected in every conversation. But that one, I can't even imagine the Alabama response if the James Franklin name started to show up as a candidate. But I think it's going to be intriguing. I think Alabama will certainly have the wherewithal and the finances to get whomever they want. I don't think anyone's doubting that for even a second.
Right. I also think it's very interesting that this decision comes right before the change in college football as well. He always said that he would leave if it never became it wasn't fun anymore, right? And so I think he had to weigh his options here. We did potentially have an incoming championship year on the line, right? But with the new changes in college football and the playoff situation, I think it comes down to, okay, the NILs, all this, it's become too much. It's not really about the game anymore. It's more about, okay, how many are you winning? How much do you have to pay? It's about money, and it's about something other than the game and the development of players. And so I think this is something that he had to kind of weigh in his own mind of okay, well, what's going to be the best outcome for me personally, the players, the game. And I think going into this whole new season of college football, I think it'll be refreshing for all the other fans that aren't Alabama. Obviously sad for us, but it will kind of give a whole new refreshment on the game. Now that, kind of Saban's off the table, it's a wild card and it's anyone's game now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be intriguing to see how this works out in the playoff race for the 12 teams now. So, oh my goodness. I was already excited for the 12-team playoff. This just completely I mean, this means it does feel like one more part of a new era. You could argue maybe Kirby Smart's now taking that spot in the SEC, but certainly it's going to be interesting. I tried to let up a gentleman by the name of Miles, and it seems like it knocked him out. But fifth quarter Clemson, I was able to catch you up. So what's on your mind?
Well, first off, this is a historic day in college football. The undeniable GOAT has decided to hang up the clipboard and the whistle. And I agree with Brits. Anyone but Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney's a complete bum. He hasn't won a championship in 5 years. There are children learning how to talk who haven't seen a Clemson national championship under Dabo Swinney. I think that completely rules him out. Right. But no, I think it's a strong possibility. He's going to get a phone call. I know a lot of fans, including Brits, wouldn't want it because, he hasn't used the portal and he says some quirky, cringy things and this and that and that and this. But, he's going to get a call. He's going to get an offer. I would like to think he's not going to make that mistake. And I'm not saying a mistake like Bama's not the number one job in all of college football, because it is. But the mistake of following the undeniable GOAT is something that should be left to a younger coach who has a lot more to gain if and when that doesn't work out, right? Because Bama's roster is set. They are a national championship team, plug and play next year, arguably top 3 team in the country. And, it wouldn't surprise me if Bama gives a young guy the reins to, go, this is your chance to prove yourself. And a name that you guys hadn't mentioned yet was Luke Fickell. I think that's a younger-ish guy who you can bring in from Wisconsin. He's like recruited decently there. He's really handcuffed with just being out of Wisconsin, but he did great things at Cincinnati. I think you could do that. I do agree. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's a top 5 program in the nation, for a coach, and he hasn't done anything there, really significantly. But let a young guy make that so-called mistake following the GOAT, and then if they do well, more power to them. Absolutely, put them on that pedestal. But if it doesn't work out, at least his career is not completely ruined, and his entire,
right. His legacy isn't just sealed as being the guy who followed Nick Saban.
Absolutely. But
yeah, no, I got to say, Fickell, I don't think would float very well with the Bama faithful. But Dan Lanning does seem to fit into that mold. Young guy, whole career ahead of him. People might just say, oh, well, he did great at Oregon, but he just Alabama was just too much, perhaps, and maybe he'll develop into something. But I think if they were going the young guy, I would pick that. By the way, when you started out, the way you were talking about Clemson, I'm like, do we have Tyler from Spartanburg up on here? But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think the young coach would be something interesting for this because yeah, it would give them a little more runway and an opportunity to bounce back if it doesn't entirely work out. But yeah, I think the Alabama faithful are going to want someone at that very, very top, someone who has done well. And while Luke Fickell has been decent, what worked at Cincinnati, I'm not sure people would. I mean, it's weird how sometimes fans are. They might still just think Wisconsin. What's Wisconsin done? Even though it would sort of discount what he was able to achieve at Cincy. But thanks for joining us. I want to get I see I got a couple more people here.
Yeah, actually, I do have.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I do have one quick question for Brits. She did say anyone but Dabo. I would love to kind of understand that whole thought process, because I do agree, he's not using the portal and stuff, but I mean he's number 2, number 3 coach in all of college football right now.
He's all talk.
No, never Dabo. No.
He's all talk. I just don't. I would rather see. You're talking about a young coach. I'd rather see Lane Kiffin. I'm not even saying Kiffin's necessarily a better coach. I just do not like Dabo. I feel like he's all talk and he can't actually deliver. And I don't want him to come in and mess up what great foundation we already have. Like when you say you can build,
Two
then don't
national
come in and build
championships.
off someone else's.
No,
Don't take the dirty little
absolutely.
scraps.
Top 2 national championships and beating out twice. Like it's not like he's just, he's always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. I mean, he's the only coach in college football history now to have beaten Nick Saban twice in a national championship game, and he's only lost 3 of them ever. So I mean, like, he does talk a lot and he says quirky and cringy things. I'm a born and raised Clemson fan. I'm like, man, why would you say something stupid like that? Right. But I just you can't say that, an active multinational championship coach who has, by the way, done it without having a single #1 recruiting class ever, who has been able to do it at Lolo Clemson, just a podunk school in upstate South Carolina. Like, you can't just say he's all talk when he's done it twice. And, let's not let the record forget the fact that prior to that 2018 game, everyone was calling that Bama team the best ever. It's not a Mandela effect. Everyone said it. This might be the best Saban team ever, with one of the best Saban rosters ever. I mean, that 18 team was ungodly good, and Clemson made them look like they didn't even deserve it.
Here's my question to you: What's Dabo done since 2019?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he made the playoffs. He made the playoffs in 2020. And no, I'll agree. He is.
And he still won't use the portal.
He has slid. But the argument that people are bringing up about the portal, you only have 85 scholarships. Last year we had 88 scholarship players 2 weeks before the semester started. Clemson was going to have to pull scholarships from certain players. Dabo had said he was going to have to do that.
Bro,
and
this man Dabo lost to Duke.
Their decision was made.
I want to let Matt get his thoughts in here because he's been patient and I know he's chomping at the bit to join in this conversation. But one thought on that, I just have to say, yeah, I do agree. If this were 3 years ago, I think Dabo would have been more of a lock. But the last 3 years, compared to that run, has been a little more concerning.
It's been trash. Let's keep it real. It's been trash. This man.
Well, hey, I remember Clemson. I remember Clemson before Dabo. So trust me, it can be a lot worse. But
yeah, y'all remember that? Y'all remember Bama before Saban? I'm sure there's a handful of y'all probably don't.
Yeah, is it scary? There's people who don't remember that period of time. But what are your thoughts on this retirement, though? I'd love to hear your thoughts here, Matt.
Completely shocked. I literally woke up. And my phone's going off. I'm like, yo, what the hell's going on? And I look, and the first thing I see is the ESPN. I think everybody saw the ESPN thing first. I'm like, okay, so if ESPN got it, let me look at Twitter. So I open up Twitter, Bleacher Report, everybody, literally everybody under the sun. All right, so I guess it's official. Ain't no troll. Okay, well, now I'm thinking, okay, who we gonna go after? Well, obviously Dan Lanning's name gets thrown in there. Lane Kiffin, Sark, Dabo. I'm like, okay. All right, well, then I'm thinking, okay, who's going to leave? Because now the transfer portal window is now open for another 30 days. Well, there's somebody I was in another space with. Her nephew is on the team. So far, most of the players want to stay. Now, as far as the new kids that just came in, like Julian Sand and all them, we're still waiting to see what they do, but yeah, that's pretty much where the kids. Everybody's shocked. Nobody knew except some of the staff a few minutes before he came in. They did a players only meeting, or not players only, but a regular team meeting, and he broke the news. He said, basically, I feel like I'm getting too old. I'm tired, and this is it. So it is what it is.
I think this was truly one of his best coaching jobs this past season. We watched these guys come from to championship level playing, which is incredible, which goes to say, yes, he's tired, he's old, but he still had it in him. And so knowing that and trying to see them through the whole way, I can just see it like now, like looking back. Um, he was really trying to just finish it off right. And,
Yeah.
he kept saying finish, finish. Um, and I feel so bad that was the last game with him, but he really did an amazing coaching job on this team. And I really think it'll show the culture of the team and everyone on this team of who they can get to stay and who they can convince those new guys to continue to stay as well, even with whoever coach.
And if you
one thing,
committed and you decide to decommit, you never was committed in the first place. I ain't trying to hear it.
Exactly.
By the way, I noticed as this space has been going on, the official, and I dropped it in the comments here, the official statement on the Alabama website has been dropped that, he announces his retirement after 17 seasons at Alabama. So, I mean, not that anyone, I mean, it was pretty, this is one of those rumors that when it came out and the level of reporting that came out, we knew it was going to be for real, but yeah, 100%. It's over. Which is just wild to say. I mean, celebrations in some places. I mean, I saw
Little brother will never not be little brother. They are literally rolling Toomer's corner.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Yeah. I mean, that's what. To be honest, for those of us in college football, just neutral fans, this is what we love about the sport. I mean, when your rivals will do something like that, that is something else. What can I say? Final quarter Clemson. I know, probably not final quarter, fifth quarter Clemson. I know you wanted to say something, and then I've led up also AT Leon 2015. I'll get you in here in a second as well. But fifth quarter. What's just a quick comment, and let's move on.
No, absolutely. I'll keep this quick. Do we think that Saban might stay in some form of like an administration role, or more of like a like a hands-off, like athletic department field?
I think for the first year, I think he has enough respect to just kind of sit back. Yeah. I think he'll step in and just
Is
say
it going to be like
hi.
what they said with Pete Carroll? Is he going to evolve into something?
I think he has enough respect to.
Isn't that just so
let the
funny
next coach
that
do
like
his
so
thing.
much, these two were announced on the same day, like Pete Carroll at the Seahawks, and then and Nick Saban. My goodness, a lot of people, and I know this has been in discussion over the past couple of years at least, that it seems like the rumor is ESPN would love to have him take over for Carso, and it sounds like he wouldn't mind that idea. But of course, everyone's being respectful of Lee Corso, who wants to stay on. It's kind of what's keeping him alive in a lot of ways. But man, that would be interesting. I mean, because they probably have to change it a little bit. Because I admit the idea of Nick Saban suddenly turning really loose and saying like, "Give me that, give me that," duckhead or something, and putting it on at the end of the show would be a little bit out of character for him. But who knows what sort of direction he'd like to go with it. Another thing that came up, and I was listening to this on another discussion, and it's come up before in various articles and podcasts with strong sources. Coaches, whenever they've said like we would love to have a commissioner of college football, they always would say, "Gosh, if Nick Saban were in coaching, he would be like the ultimate person for this hypothetical job." And I want to be very clear, like it's unclear where that would come from. Now, with what's being brought up, I mean, for example, with Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA, in the past couple of months, the idea of creating a new division for the very, very top of college football, which has been discussed, I want to be clear, before, in years before, because with the idea of inevitably compensating players seems to be something that's coming. The very top teams will have no problems doing that. Alabama is obviously included in that group. What would happen to that group? Would they become sort of a semi-pro league? Would you have to have a commissioner? Then suddenly Nick Saban does become like the most attractive person because he's a person who would get it done. And I think that's the reason that makes him so attractive for that hypothetical position were one to ever come up. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But AT Leon, and I apologize, I'm mangling this every time I say it. What's on your mind? You've been super patient.
Well, roll tide, y'all. First off,
roll tide.
It's a shock today, y'all. I think one of the greatest coaches of our time just retired today. But I kind of had a feeling it was coming sooner rather than later. I just didn't expect it to be today. It was supposed to be like a normal Wednesday for everybody. And like around 5:30, 6 o'clock, we get the news from ESPN that he was retiring. But we got to counter into the fact of this year or this upcoming season, we are going to 12. And not only that, the season is going to be a lot longer. I mean, at 72 years old, I mean, Saban's got to be thinking, we got to go an extra month. I mean, the national championship's not till like January 20th. Like, I don't think Saban wants to be doing this. I mean, I would expect that maybe he'll run out his contract till 2027. That's how long we signed him for. But to go this season, it was unexpected. The fact that it was just going to be a lot longer, the NIL deals, the whole transfer portal. I mean, it's all mounting up to be like, hey, I don't want to do this no more. I mean, you might just ride off in the sunset. You got one more shot at it. You had one more shot at it this year, and it's just a sad day. But we kind of saw it coming. I just didn't expect it to be so soon.
You're right. I was saying
Yeah.
the same thing. I think he had to take into consideration like the new era of college football and if he wanted to even step foot in it. And I think this is unfortunate how he had to go out. I mean, knowing that I watched his final win is like, oh my God. And now that makes me like that much sadder that I didn't go to Pasadena, like when I had the chance. But I think knowing that he had to make a choice. Like, am I going to step into this next era or am I going to go out on top of being the greatest of all time of this past era of college football? And it'll be refreshing. Very, very interesting road ahead. Who do you think you want as the coach if you got a choice?
If I had to choose, I think my top pick would probably be Dan Lanning. That'd probably be my first call to. We definitely have the capital to go get the $20 million to get his buyout. Another one I probably would look into is Glenn Schumann from Georgia. We would look into that as well.
Yep.
I do not want anything to do with Bill O'Brien or the only problem I got
Bill O'Brien, out your mouth.
The only problem I got the bone to pick with Lane is the fact that we might have to deal with Pete Golden again if Lane were to be hired. I do not want that. I've already lived through it once. I don't want to live through it again. That's the only problem I have with Lane Kiffin. Otherwise, Lane would be a good choice as well. The offense was definitely dynamic under Lane Kiffin when he was around as the offensive coordinator. I think Glenn Schumann would be a good pick, especially for his defensive mind and how he got Georgia's defense together. I think a lot of it's just going to be up to whoever's going to take this job is going to have big shoes to fill. But they're going to be set. And let's be clear. They're not going to be. We're not going to have to start over until at least 27. I mean, the new coach is going to have easily a good setup. They're just going to have big shoes to fill because it may not be, we're going to go undefeated, but that's great. That's okay too, because next year we can go up to 3 losses. I mean, we're not looking at, we're one loss and we're done. Our season's pretty much cooked. Then we're kind of like hoping and praying that everything just kind of falls in our order. We can go up to 2 losses next season and be like, okay, we're still in it, and it's gonna change the whole dynamic of college football. You're gonna have teams, like Liberty and all these smaller schools are going to be competing, going undefeated, and going into the 12-team playoff. So it's going to be interesting. But to say the least, whoever takes this job will be set. And with Saban announcing the retirement today on kind of like the last day of the transfer portal. Now they'll have the extra 30 days, but let's think. 30 days to get everything together. You have to get enrolled. You have to get accepted. You have to move. I mean, the only thing that would hurt us was our upcoming recruiting class, the ones we just recruited. But I think a lot of the people we have right now will probably stay. I mean, that's how I see it.
You brought up something that made me think of the next coach might get I always call it the Larry Coker effect, because Larry Coker comes to Miami, inherits an incredible team, and wins national championship his first season, and then Miami trails off. And then it turns out, it's actually Larry Coker isn't necessarily the greatest at maintaining the keys he was handed. But I agree, like Alabama, whoever is the head coach, is going to inherit an incredibly talented roster and can do a lot probably without even necessarily having the same level of skills. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a strong chance that you'll get someone who can come very close to Nick Saban. I don't think anyone can. quite replace him. Ski Master Murphy, I see your head up, and then I'm going to let up Parlay Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw two names in that just because of how crazy college football is and how extremely
if you say Deion Sanders, I'm gonna have a heart attack.
No. It's even better. And how dramatic the SEC is. I would say for like a long-term coach to come out of nowhere that they might pick, Jimbo Fisher could be a realistic crazy call they make. But
No.
also like as you said with the Larry Coker effect, someone who I could see them possibly going for like a 1 year mercenary contract just for him to come in, win the championship, and leave like Kawhi Leonard. Given how flimsy things are for him right now, could be Bill Belichick.
Oh my goodness! That would be. Can you imagine how? I can't imagine Bill Belichick as a college football coach. Because can you imagine, like, wait, I have to recruit these idiots? Like I have to go to.
That's why. That's why I said a 1 year mercenary contract. He doesn't come in. He just takes this team, wins the championship, and is done with it.
All right, this is an official statement for Greg Byrne.
Hey, thanks for sharing that, by the way. I just saw it pop up. But
yeah,
as with any coaching search, our goal is to be thorough but expedient. Our ideal candidate will be strong in recruiting and relationship building, player development, excel in X's and O's, and have the overall ability to lead this historic program. There will be plenty of rumors out there during this process. Next time I talk publicly will be to announce the head coach. That's awesome.
Sounds like
if you don't hear from me,
Deion Sanders, though.
If you don't hear from me, don't believe it.
Boy,
oh my goodness. So they're not necessarily going to have a like that unfortunate hiring cycle Tennessee had a little while ago, but where it turned into a 3-ring circus. So I think Alabama's
poverty like
so I'll
Tennessee,
just say this right now. Going off of that statement, it ain't Dabo.
Yeah, it better not be Dabo. I don't want Dabo.
Yeah, because Dabo can't recruit.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see how this all pans out for sure. Let's see here.
Hey Joe, who do you want?
Who do I want? I kind of like Schumann, but like Dan Lanning is really like.
It's going to be interesting too. I wonder because with all of this stuff going on, assuming Greg Byrne may have known a little further ahead, or at least had a if Saban whatever happens, plan B. I wonder like who his list was and how quickly they were able to act on it. Like, did they do? I mean, if I were an AD, I'd be like talking to the agents because I'm sure they hear from these agents all the time. Like, hey, just let's keep in touch. Let's keep in touch with a wink. And is it as quickly as that? How quickly can you turn it around? I mean, especially now that all these coaches are done with their bowls, you don't have the distraction. This is when they're kind of taking a half-second breather before they have to head out and start recruiting again. I mean the champion of the Fiesta Bowl, the Slayer of Liberty. Why not bring him over? But Parlay Joe, what else is on your mind? You've been super patient.
Not much. I mean, what if Deion was to be the coach? What do you guys think? I don't think Bruce would be allowed, but
bro, I would literally jump off a bridge.
No, I don't want.
Even as a Michigan fan,
that's just going to be a disaster. That's too much of a show me the money ordeal than it is football talk.
Like the man, no. Oh my God, I don't know what I would do honestly if it was Deion, bro. I would get my tattoo removed and then enter the fan portal. I don't know, dog.
The fan portal.
We have a bunch of fans, so we have new fans coming out every single day.
Oh my God, bro! I really don't know. I know, and I wouldn't do any of that. I'm kidding, but I just.
What if Stoops was the coach?
Stoops?
Yeah.
Boy, stop! I know you're not.
What?
I
heard some trolls saying that.
Bow your head,
yeah, and they're trolls for a reason, Joe.
Hey.
Joe, bow your own head, fam.
Wait, okay, so I have a question. Why Lanning over Sark?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'd take Sark.
I know. That's what I'm like. Why are people saying Lanning?
I think Texas is going to literally match whatever we get.
Yeah, I think the problem is Texas can compete with Alabama. That's the problem. It would be a lateral move, and I think Texas going into the SEC will absolutely go to the mattresses to keep where they stuff all their oil money to keep to keep Sark at whatever cost possible. I think it's too much of a move that it would be. And Sark's happy. Like it's not like
what if help get him that job?
I've seen a lot of people say. I've seen a lot of people say, "What if it's Kirby?"
Kirby's going for the Falcons job, man. What are you talking about? He's going to the Falcons soon.
I think people are scared of if it was Kirby.
Georgia would have.
Oh, Georgia would have the biggest meltdown in the world.
Bro, Tennessee would have a huge meltdown.
Oh, they would. It'd be funny. Let them melt down.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
I would love that.
We truly are in the like the silly season, like in a short period of time. Because I mean, we thought we were done with it. We thought we were done with it, and then suddenly, you know, like this, you couldn't have uncapped a bigger coaching carousel, because this is going to have. I mean, I assume it's going to be another head coach. I mean, it could be a coordinator like Glenn Schumann, but I mean, more likely than not, it's going to be head coach, and it means we're going to get another head coaching search right after this. Probably for a prominent job, because it's not like Alabama's going to pick somebody who no one's going to care about. It's going to be someone big. So another school is going to have a big recruiting search right after this. So who knows? We could be in February and still be looking for some school with a new head coach.
Yeah, this is going to lead to like a recruiting arms race cascade. Because like, let's say, just for sakes, let's say it is Dan Lanning. So now Alabama recruits in the transfer portal, then Oregon's in the transfer portal. Oregon gets another good coach, then those kids in the transfer portal. This is just going to create a
domino effect.
The swirl is just going to be crazy. It's going to be an arms race, and nothing's going to make sense.
And then another thing I'm thinking about, I don't know about the other Bama fans in here, is how does our whoever our new coach is, what's going to happen with our NIL? Like, are they going to change
What's
it?
going to happen with the recruits? Because Ryan Williams is already.
Bro, I don't care about Ryan Williams. I'll tell you this right now. I really don't care. He didn't seem all locked in to begin with, in my opinion. So
Julian,
he want to decommit and go ahead.
Are you going to care about that?
You said what?
If Julian Saban decommits, do we care about that?
He never was really truly committed. Like, if you commit and decommit because Saban leaves, like, you're not committed to the program. You're committed to Saban.
Right.
I think it will be interesting to see. I could see some shifts happening when a new coach gets hired, because then you might get like, oh, they look at what the guy ran at his previous school and they might be a little more skeptical. But I think anything in the initial run, I kind of agree that that's a bit early to be leaving any school. You know, it's going to be interesting too. By the way, I love that point about the chain effect we're going to get with 30-day transfer portals opening up. I mean, this is going to also piss off all the other head coaches, because think about it. They're already angry about this schedule and how busy it gets, especially in December. Because of the academic school year, they have to do, you know, the regular transfer window opens up so people can kind of get into these new schools. And now suddenly it's like, oh, great, I have to decide whether I want to go after this. And to be fair, it might be limited only because so many of these rosters are already going to be kind of full at that point. I mean, unless you're going whole hog Dion and just telling people like, sorry, you're no longer on the team. I mean, most programs are going to be pretty locked into who they have, but it's going to be mixed with some interesting situations. You know, I want to get to Chris. He's been really patient, and I see his hand up. What's on your mind, Chris?
Hey, everybody keeps mentioning Dan Lanning, and he's done well at Oregon, but so did Cristobal, so did Willie, and like these schools, and everybody goes, well, Willie's going to have way more talent to pick from in Florida. Willie's going to have way more money to use at Florida State. You know, Cristobal, Miami, think of the talent in Miami. Cristobal's about to be winning 11 games, and then they both fell flat on their face. What's going to keep Lanning from doing the same thing? And my other thing is I understand Alabama has beat the tar out of my Tennessee Vols for the better part of 15 years with Saban there. But Alabama fans, and I get it because a lot of them became Alabama fans. A lot of them are younger and stuff like that. Alabama was a school that got told no by a Big East coach before Nick Saban got hired. Like, they're going to have some good people wanting that job, but to think that it's just going to go off without a beat is silly, because it didn't go off without a beat after Bear. It didn't go off without a beat after Gene Stallings. So to think that somebody's just going to come in and we're going to be able to get away with Nick Saban shine forever, I think is a little cart before the horse.
Chris, I think you've kind of the 2 points you made are actually arguably kind of why Dan Lanning might be somewhat attractive, only because we've talked about it before, but who wants to be the one to follow Nick Saban? It's such a tough job. You'd want a young coach who probably has an opportunity to build their career back up if it doesn't go so well. Maybe they get that Larry Coker effect where that initial year or two, just the sheer talent of the team wins another championship with a decent coach. You're right. Lanning is still fairly new. We don't entirely know how well he's going to do. I have to admit that what he's done at Oregon has been impressive. I mean, what made Oregon such a tough team is how physical he made it, how he made it different than a lot of the other Pac-12 schools, because he kind of brought that SEC mentality, especially in things like being physical on the line and all of that stuff. I mean, that's why each time they played Washington this season, everyone thought they were gonna beat them.
Exactly.
And then, of course,
but they're outspending. I mean, they are outspending by 7 figures everybody but USC on the West Coast, and USC had its issues. But like, if he comes to Alabama, Alabama's got money. Don't get me wrong, but so does Georgia, so does Auburn, so does LSU, so does Tennessee, so does Texas A&M. Texas and Oklahoma are coming in the conference. Like, you can't just get away with, well, I'm just going to go. Georgia didn't want Jordan James. We're going to go get him and bring him up to Oregon and have the best talent and still not win the conference. Like, I just think Dan Lanning's kind of, I don't know, man. I think it would be a mistake to pull another Oregon coach. I think Oregon kind of props itself up in the conference it's been in. And then when these coaches get to a place where everybody else is equal to them, their true colors show.
I have to say, Oregon fans love you right now because they are very tired of people coming to them and picking people out for sure. Let's see here. I wanted to let up Ace. I see him up there again. I'm going to try to get to several more of you. This is RCFB Talk 175. Bobak Ha'Eri. I host these here at RCFB. I do a show with Shayon J. Roger for CBS, but thought this would be a good time to do an emergency kind of Twitter space to hear people's thoughts on the news of Nick Saban's retirement, which was made official by the school in the middle of this space, but we all had assumed it was going to be official anyway. And by the way, one thing we have to say is his coaching tree is one of the most amazing. I mean, not only the people that he brought up, but his, as people have joked, his famous rehabilitation program for Nick Saban's schools for coaches who didn't coach very well, and Sark, Kiffin, so many that have gone through there. It's just tremendous work here. But Ace, what's on your mind?
Well, first off, I would like to say I definitely don't think that Sark is going to be coming from Texas. Sark is definitely not leaving Texas. They got, like you said, they got the money to keep him there. They got everything he already needs. He already established his culture. He already has his quarterback. Everything is pretty much already set there. I honestly, I think it's either going to be Lanning or Kiffin. I really lean more towards Kiffin because Kiffin can definitely work the portal offensive mind. We would just have to get a defensive coordinator in that's going to really run everything and have everything set up, to be honest with you. But I mean, if they do lean towards Lanning, then Lanning can definitely, I think he can establish a culture there and continue a run. It might not be so Saban-esque, but I think he can definitely rattle off 2 or 3 if he can continue to build a culture, especially with everything we already have established.
Yeah, that I don't think there's a lot of controversy there. I see a couple of hundreds on there. Parlay Joe, I saw your hand up.
Yeah. This is don't get too mad about this, but what do you guys think about Urban Meyer coming back for 2 years and then when he wins a championship, he gets a heart attack or some shit again?
I will let some of
Joe,
you
bow your head, bro. Bow your head. Hey, ready? Hey, bow this man's head, bro.
No. Joe is apparently one of like the football script writers, and that would get a lot of attention.
You got to hang that one up. That's not it. Urban definitely not. He's retired.
We have 1 year of success and then 10 years of misery with him going to talking to all the girls.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, and isn't that the funny thing?
Joey
Like,
Freshwater isn't that much better, so.
You're just lobbing bombs in the middle of this Twitter space. It is too bad Kevin Steele is planning to retire. By the way, now you look at Kevin Steele's decision to retire. Did he have like a quiet conversation with Coach Saban and these, coach was like, I'm thinking about leaving, and Steele was like, yeah, funny you say that, or was it vice versa? Was that the conversation? Like Steele was the one who said, like, walked in, like thinking about stepping down, and Coach Saban's like, hey, you. So I can't even imagine it. But Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, all I know is that this 10-part 30 for 30 gonna go crazy.
Absolutely. Ski Master Murphy, what did you want to add to this?
I can't wait for 30 for 30.
Yeah, I was just also thinking about, still going down as well with Saban, possibly Belichick and Pete Carroll, like are all 72. This sort of makes me think now, was Joe Paterno the only football coach truly willing to die on the sideline coaching?
Bro.
I think you could argue that Bobby Bowden was willing to, but he overstayed his welcome. They finally just eased him out.
What about the guy from Kansas State?
Oh, Bill Snyder. He went out on his own terms too.
I think
he's still
Saban
alive,
would have if it weren't for
He was barely walking on the sideline that last year.
Bill Snyder's alive, right?
Yeah. So he was able to step. I mean, because remember, he retired and then came back because I think it was Kevin Prince. They retired to replace him. Probably they hired to replace him, and then it didn't go well. And then he came back and got Kansas State working again, and then stepped back again. So, but yeah, no, I mean, Wade Boggs is very much still alive. No, I'm sorry, couldn't resist that particular reference. Let's see here. I think, Dr. Pepper Bucko, I got you up here. What's on your mind, our friend from Pitt?
Hear me out. So I saw an article earlier explaining here we could come here, and I saw James Franklin. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Bro.
I'm good with that.
If you guys get him, you would never win another national championship. You would get first rounded every year.
I think that's the consensus for him.
But forget a national championship. We wouldn't even make a conference championship. What you talking like? What? You giving that man too much credit.
Rick already said.
And watch Alabama games.
I have to say, I remember Pete Thamel, like one of his early tweets when all this was being announced, like he included James Franklin in there, and I'm like, that has to just be an autocomplete or something like that. He just has to have like new coach. What you do when a grade A or an S level coach hiring comes open, you have to. Maybe he's getting a little bit of a kickback from that agent that like just make sure he's included in every list. He doesn't have to get it. You can put him on the last person, but just make sure he's in every list. But he's certainly not a realistic person to expect there. Let's see here. I wanted to add. I see we got a couple more people. I'll try to get some people up here. Seed oil. Let's see here. Seed oil. If you get a chance, just hit unmute. Want to hear your thought? Let's see here. Sometimes there's a bit of a time delay when I let people up. Seed oil. Can you hear me? Just go ahead and unmute. Oh, might be having a little bit of audio problems there. No problem. I'm going to actually let's hear Depressed Fan Fish Sports. If you get a chance, unmute. Would love to hear from you.
All right. I had a couple guys in my mind for that coaching. I was thinking Mike Vrabel, maybe. Or maybe they hire with Tommy Rees. I know it doesn't sound good. Nobody wants that. But.
Absolutely not. Tommy Rees.
No to Tommy Rees.
No to Tommy Rees.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
That was poor play call execution.
That's a quick no, my guy.
Hey, as a Michigan fan in here, you can't be Tommy Rees. That last play.
Just do not come after Marcus Freeman.
We're just going to run up the middle. What a play call.
Yeah, and it's so funny too because Marcus Freeman also came up, and again, I don't think he just hasn't been. He's been a head coach for too little time, and I mean he hasn't been. I'm not gonna. He hasn't been terrible at Notre Dame, but he hasn't done enough where someone would be like, "Oh yeah, totally. That's the guy you want to follow, Nick Saban at Alabama." So I'm not saying he's bad, but he simply just hasn't done enough. With time, it's possible, certainly, but yeah, for sure. Let's see here. I'm going to also level up Luke. Level up Luke. What's on your mind?
I think I joined in on, I think the call maybe right after Alabama was selected. And I said, hey, don't hate me for being the one Alabama fan on here. But this is like the day that we never thought would come. So thank you for doing this, Twitter Spaces. Man, I just heard the guy in front of me say Mike Vrabel, and I heard that on Cover 3, and I never would have considered that name, but out of the top 4 or 5 I was thinking, wasn't on there. As soon as I heard Mike Vrabel, I was like, man, it kind of feels right. That feels like a really good fit. I don't think you'd ever go back to college with, NFL teams definitely having a job opening for him. But I mean, Mike Vrabel feels good. D'Amico Ryan, I think, might be an interesting name. Once again, would you go to college? But the one I've been saying for the last 7 years, whenever Saban would decide to retire, would be Dabo Sweeney. That is an Alabama dude. He's from the Birmingham area, played for Alabama, was an assistant. I mean, Dabo's kind of fed up at Clemson right now, and I think that might be kind of a time for him to move on. And he doesn't have much to lose. I mean, honestly, he's already won championships. Dan Lanning, I think the buyout's way too high. I don't see that happening. I've heard that he's kind of the top name on the list, but why would you pay a $20 million buyout? And then why would Dan Lanning take the job and have all the pressure of being the successor to Nick Saban? I don't see that happening.
Well, I'm going to jump in just because I know as you were speaking, I wish you could have seen the shower.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Thumbs down. Yeah, that was spectacular.
I mean, hey, look, I'm not saying Urban Myers, okay? I'm not
I know,
I'm not saying James Franklin.
But I have to say the Alabama fans, at least in this space, have been very much unanimous against Dabo. But Dan Lanning's an interesting one. I think they'd be willing to pay the $20 million. You brought up, though, an interesting point. I could see him being like, I don't know if I want to be the one to follow Nick Saban. I could see why he would absolutely love the job, but the only thing I think that would ever hold him back is, holy hell, that's going to be a zoo. Of course, you want someone who's cocky enough to think they can do it, because if somebody is going to do it, it's going to be the person that has that level of confidence. But
and that's where I come in with Mike Vrabel. I think Mike Vrabel has the confidence, kind of the hard-nosed appeal.
I just think the only concern there is, I think you also touched on it, a lot of the guys in the NFL, they kind of want to stay in the NFL if they can. It's very rare you find an NFL coach who wants to go back. It's actually, you end up with someone like Nick Saban, who goes there and just finds, this is not for me. I hate this, and immediately goes back to college. But a lot of times when they go there, you even get someone like Pete Carroll, who the only reason he went to college is because no one wanted him. I mean, he had 2 college jobs with the Jets, and he's the guy who was the predecessor of Belichick. And then he didn't coach for a year because no one wanted to hire him. And then he's the 4th choice at USC because USC didn't want him either. And he was the only one who wanted the job. And then still he wanted to eventually go back to the NFL. You could make, they're not entirely similar in personality at all, but Harbaugh's kind of feeling that same way too. It's like a guy who's like, all right, I've proved I can do it here. I want to go back to the NFL and see if I can do it at that level. So that's with Vrabel and some of these other NFL guys. I think you have to, if they're hireable, if they can find that position in the NFL, they usually like the way the game works there, versus the pretty nutty world of recruiting that now you have to navigate as a head coach, and the fickle nature of kids that are in high school trying to lure them and trying to lure people from other teams. It's such a weird game now. And I could see why, for example.
If you don't mind, I just thought of my original question, actually. So the only time I can really remember hearing about this kind of situation happening, where maybe the greatest coach of the era retires and somebody has to follow them, was, of course, Bear Bryant. I mean, maybe you could say Woody Hayes, but just from your knowledge, like, what situations like this have ever happened, and what is the outcome normally for that next coach?
Not great. I'll say that much. My immediate comparison is actually John Wooden, the UCLA head coach, because you need someone who has been literally a legend in their field. And Bear Bryant as well is a good one too. But I mean, if you look at what John Wooden did, it's like Nick Saban. I don't think anyone's going to be able to match that, especially as we're going to a 12-team playoff era. Yeah, it's not necessarily great for the person that follows them. Let's see here. I saw a couple of hands go up. Before we move on to the next person, because I also want to keep this moving. Let's see, A.T. Leon, and I apologize, I keep mangling that one.
Actually, Joe, you go first, man. Your hand was up first.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, thanks. I was gonna, since you guys were talking about NFL guys, I was just thinking of Brian Dable. He was at Alabama first. He could be one of those guys, like you said about Saban, who just didn't like the NFL because not doing too hot after last year. I see you guys have the thumbs down. I don't really care.
Okay, A.T. Leon, what's your thought?
Okay, well, going back to that Dabo concept real quick. The only reason why I don't want Dabo is we got to go before the NIL and before the transfer portal. That was when you had recruiting. Okay, that's when Dabo got in there and said, okay, we're going to go just keep doing what we're doing. We're going to recruit. We're going to talk to recruits. Now the game that has changed, we have to keep your eye on your transfers, and you have to use the transfer portal. There has to be a stipulation. If he were to be hired, if Greg Burns said, hey, we're going to go with Dabo, there's got to be stipulations of you got to do transfer portal. There's got to be stipulations if we were to hire Dabo, because you cannot keep doing what you're doing now because it's not working. It's not working. You've turned Clemson back into Clemsoning. I mean, it's a total disaster, Clemson. I mean, you barely get out. And not only that, let's go back. Let's just look at the ACC for a sec. Okay, we're going to take a guy from the ACC. All right, he's going to be put into the SEC, which you're going to be going against Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia. Can Dabo get it done compared to playing? Okay, we're playing Georgia Tech this week.
I didn't say Dabo Sweeney, bro. I said Brian Dabo. Dabo.
No. He's not talking about you.
It came up with the previous caller.
I would like to have him. I think he'd be a good coach. He came before, but I'm just saying, going back to the Dabo, I'm just saying he would have to learn the culture of the SEC. He has not had a good winning record against these SEC. He's had against us two wins, but most of the time
2-2 versus. Actually, he's 3-2. He's 2-3 versus Saban.
Yeah, 2-3 against Saban.
That's with an ACC team, to be fair. That's not with an SEC team.
Yeah, he would have to learn.
Okay, I'm just. I want to keep this moving just to allow a couple of other voices. I'm going to allow just press fan. You've been. Looks like I had an audio issue on my side. Sorry about that, guys. Looks like I had a bit of a internet issue on my side. Sorry about that. Let's see here. So that was a good kind of cleansing moment. I'm going to let up let's see here. Scorpio, when you get a chance, feel free to unmute.
Yeah, this really feels like the end of an era. Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, and Nick Saban all either stepping out or just blatantly leaving football. It feels really we're ushering in a new era of the sport. I don't want to say finally, because it really felt like we were changing eras in 2020. Well, in 2019, when we saw LSU, we saw Brady and Belichick not making it past the wild card round. It really feels like, okay, an era is over, a new starting to commence.
Absolutely. I think this is the way this shift has happened. Is striking, particularly today again, seeing someone like Carroll and Saban both. One voluntarily move on is utterly fascinating, and I agree on that point. Let's see here, Dylan. You're up here now as well. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for having me. I just wanted to say one thing about Dabo, and then I have a coaching prediction of my own. If this happened last year, I think Dabo would be the number one choice before a lot of his NIL animosities came out. But I think the obvious choice has to be Kiffin. Alabama's at this position where they need to win, and they need to win fast. And Kiffin has proven again and again that he can work the portal and NIL. And that's what they'll need to do, because they don't have the time to give the coach 2-3 years to get their playbook in. They got to get it done next year. So I think Kiffin is the ultimate choice. And I'm a Penn Stater, so for you guys saying Franklin, please take him. Just get him out of State College. We are so sick of him.
Yeah, I know. I think that would be the thing. I mean, it's always a bad news when you hire a coach and the other team is like, "Oh, cool, man, thanks." We've seen that happen on a couple of times, and it always ends up being true. It always ends up being there's a reason why.
And then if Alabama does have 2-3 years to let a guy build up a program, I think an interesting hire could be Joe Brady out of Buffalo. He's a young guy, a lot to prove. His offenses have always been pretty electric. So I think that would just be a crazy left field hire, but I could definitely see it happening.
Yeah, I think definitely. I'm going to say this much. I bet Greg Byrne is going to pick like this, a safe candidate for the most part. Ski Master Murphy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin's been coming up like a lot, and not just in here, but in the whole media sphere. And I just sort of think but I feel like there's sort of like an air of the coaches now that we're basically down to 2 super conferences, that the good teams in these super conferences, like you're not gonna be able to pull a coach away from another one. I mean, I know we all have a very sort of opinion of Lane Kiffin that he's not as not that great, but I mean, him being at Ole Miss and them coming off 2 10-win seasons in the last 3 seasons, I don't think they're just going to allow him to just go to Alabama. And I think he may not want to.
I think
be
he
able to
would
build his
take
own
it, but I
legacy.
don't think Ole Miss could outbid Alabama. I just don't think it would happen. And there's the cachet thing. I mean, Alabama is a true blue blood. I mean, in the truest sense of the word. And I think that will always kind of be attractive. I mean, but you're right. Maybe I just don't know. I don't know if I see Lane Kiffin as a guy who's like, no, I want my legacy to be chiseled. I want my statue to be built here in Oxford. I could see him wanting to get to that highest level. I mean, man was crazy enough to play for Al Davis with the Raiders back in the day. So yeah, I mean, he's willing to take it on. I don't know. That's just me.
Kiffin's that guy that will always look for the better job, and you can't really get much better than Alabama. So I think if they call, he's definitely going.
Yeah. Let's see here. I've let up Coach Clark, our friend from Western Oregon. What's going on? What's on your mind in all of this?
I've spent a good percentage of my day crunching numbers on recruits. You know, the saying goes, time moves on, all good things must end. I'm just looking forward to, with all this, we're a super conference stuff, the changing of the guard, and I think it'll be with the expansion of the playoffs, it is going to be a great opportunity for all the Greater Five to show what they can do,
Certainly. Yeah, especially especially now that, I mean, Alabama may be a weaker team. I mean, not necessarily. Well, we certainly be a team in transition. It's going to have a lot of questions up. And now I'm trying to imagine here. Imagine next season, Lane Kiffin isn't the head coach of Alabama, but I don't know, I assume Ole Miss is playing Alabama next year. Pardon me, I don't know how the SEC's recreated their schedule, but can you imagine him still having fun, like talking crap before that game and then imagining to then lose again to Alabama? That would be
We actually do not play them next year. We don't have them. We don't have Texas, and it's like one more school we usually play that gives us a tough game that we don't play next year either.
Interesting.
Mississippi State.
Yep. Don't have to deal with the cowbells.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with
easy schedule.
Oh yeah, it's a very easy schedule. So, no.
I'm just really hoping the expanded. Sorry, Ace.
We got Georgia at home. We got to go to LSU, to Tennessee, to Oklahoma. Boy, yeah.
Coach Clark, I know you wanted to add something.
I guess I've been like a broken record on you the last few weeks. I'm looking forward to the expanded playoffs. I think that and the regulation of the transfer portal is going to slow. It's going to slow things down. It was getting kind of insane there. They're going to, make kids think about it before entering it, go in for the right reasons. That too. And, that too. And I think with the expansion of the playoffs, we're going to see, it's going to be a lot, almost like March Madness, kind of, you could call it September Madness or something like that.
Absolutely.
Bracketology in the fall, and it's like you're going to see these schools that are in Conference USA or Mountain West, potentially upset the big dogs, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I definitely think the expanded playoff is going to be utterly fascinating. I cannot wait to see that. I am going to I apologize here. I have to make a couple of quick switches on here.
That's fine.
It looks like I'm having I'm having a little bit of trouble with some of this. Trying to let a few more people up here. Let me see. That should work. I had to drop one person to let one person up. I think I hit the max on how many people could be up here. So I apologize about that. Let's see here. Big Game Wildcat.
You make people co-host, you get more people in here.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, what's up, guys?
Go ahead, Big Game Wildcat.
So I know you guys are quick to knock on Dabo, and rightfully so. I know that as an Alabama fan, obviously you guys aren't going to really want Dabo. I can understand it. But just be careful about what you wish for, because Greg Burns is very close friends to Rich Rodriguez, who he hired at Arizona. So just be careful about what you wish for. I would much rather have Dabo if I was talking about head coaches than potentially like Rich Rodriguez or James Franklin. So, I know you guys are quick to pull the trigger here, but just be careful about what you wish for.
That is always an interesting question. No matter who gets hired, it's going to be like, what about the other guy? What unless the next person is just a continuation of what we're seeing with Nick Saban or close to it. That's always the big question. Like, what if we had hired the other one? TBD, we'll see. Certainly, there's potential with a lot of these folks. Let's see here. I think I was able to. Oh wait, no, let me see here. Sorry, 1 second. Gonna have to be a little more moving the line a little bit there. Let me see here. There we go. Thank you all for your patience with this. It's always fun to do a Twitter space. It's always nice when we have a lot of people interested. Looks like Seed Oil Lover, we finally got you up here. So you've been super patient. What is on your mind?
Thank you about that. Sorry, last time, whenever you tap me to get up here, it mutes everything, and so I can't hear you at all, and so I don't know what's going on, but
yeah, no problem. And actually, the funny thing that happens, and we've learned this. Actually, I learned it when I went on as a guest on somebody else's space. When you're led up to the stage, whatever time delay you're hearing the show on will disappear in a moment. So suddenly, it's like you jump forward in time, and you're like, "Wait, what just happened? What's going on? I don't know what's being said here." But no, thanks for your patience. What's on your mind, man?
oh well, I'm an Oregon fan, so what's not on my mind right now?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but I guess I have a question, and anyone, feel free to chime in. Actually, before my question, I'm gonna address the fact that people were talking. I think it was Dylan. You're mentioning that, Lane Kiffin's obviously the first look, and I think Ace was up here earlier saying Sark isn't gonna be it because he's got money and all that stuff at Texas. And I'm just wondering what Dan Lanning I feel like he meets that criteria. But more than anything, my question is, how big of a problem is the buyout? Because I can't really contextualize $20 million. I'm a normal guy. And every program gets their money from, various sources, some differently than others. And I just want to know, is that something to sneeze at, but is that going to be a problem if Bama really wants Dan Lanning?
I don't think it'll be a problem. I think Alabama is absolutely a school with the passion, and they may not have necessarily, historically before he passed away, Oklahoma State obviously had Pickens, who could pay whatever he wanted. Oregon has, he's getting up there in years, but has all the Nike money. Texas and Texas A&M have all that wild oil money, and SMU has its own. That's why they were willing to take zero money to just join the ACC as the ship sinks with them aboard. But that said, Alabama can do it. They have the passion. I think that won't be a problem. If they really want him, they'll get him. But I could see a lot of other questions. I don't know if Dan Lanning would be wanting to necessarily take that spot as being the guy who follows Nick Saban, because what he's done at Oregon is exciting. I mean, they've got a great new quarterback coming in. It'll be interesting to see, because that's a big question that was kind of dogging Bo Nix this season. Is he great because of the system? Is he great on his own? It's probably a bit of both.
Yeah, he's the biggest system quarterback if I've ever seen, and I love him. But he totally maxed out his value this year with Will Stein's offense that was built for high percentage passes. He's a system QB for sure.
Which is wonderful because you've got another QB that can plug into it. I mean, that means Oregon's got a good system going. So they're going to be fun. It'll be interesting to see how they do in the Big Ten. It's still crazy to think that. I was looking just yesterday at the list of next season's conferences, and you see, actually, my favorite was running down the conference list for the ACC, and you just see Cal next to Duke, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they're in the same conference now. SMU and Stanford next to each other in the listings. Kind of wow. We're entering a new era. But I think it's going to be interesting for that. I think, but unfortunately, if Alabama really wants Dan Lanning and Dan Lanning wants Alabama, that $20 million will materialize. I have no doubt about it. Dylan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about the Dan Lanning thing. The way that I kind of see it, and there's a lot of rumors swirling around some Big Ten coaches, Harbaugh to the NFL. Apparently, Kalen DeBoer is going to talk to the Seahawks. He's going to come into a new conference already projected as one of the top teams in it with a team he's been building. So I don't know why he would leave to go start over at Alabama. I think that's why I'm more on Kiffin, because I think he's more used to the SEC. He's ready to bring all those players with him that he's gotten in the portal this year. So I see Lanning staying put and trying to ride out a high on the Big Ten.
It's an interesting argument. And I mean, I don't know if it's going to totally pan out that way, but I think it's not a bad argument. I could see that the way they're thinking on it and where they think it is. I know Level Up, you weren't a fan of that. Level Up, Luke, sorry. It shortens your guys' names in the circles. So I sometimes will just call someone by like totally the wrong, hey, Parlay J or something like that. It's like, no, there's more there. But yeah,
it's
Level
all
Up,
good.
Luke.
Yeah, I was going to throw in there as far as the buyout, like for Lanning. I know I said earlier, 20 million seems like it's a lot more trouble than it's worth with the number of options they're probably going to have. But I think the institutions can kind of negotiate the buyout process. I think they have a number of financial levers. You don't necessarily need one big backer to front the 20 million. They could probably pay it in installments over the course of a few years, like out of a media rights deal, where it's a much smaller hit, just spread out over time. I'm assuming they can do that. I've heard of those kind of situations. But as far as Lane Kiffin, I mean, to paraphrase Succession, I mean, I think we love him, but he's not a serious person. And I think that would be really hard to swallow as an Alabama fan to go from Nick Saban to Lane Kiffin. The dude will take any job that opens that has more clout. He almost took that Auburn job. They ended up with Hugh Freeze, but I think as soon as he sees an opportunity outside of Ole Miss, he's gone. I don't think that should be Alabama.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, kind of the extension of what you said is if he ends up at Alabama, the only jobs that would be theoretically better for him would be the NFL. Although I wonder if he's tired of that. I mean, that would be a question. Like, is he enjoying the fact that he is such a master of, recruiting and the transfer portal and scheming up offenses that in college where you can be a lot more creative and there's a lot more opportunities to adjust and kind of play with the talent you have in a particular year. If he's happy to then be at the top level of it, but certainly as a cultural fit, oh my goodness, can you imagine going from Nick Saban press conferences to Lane Kiffin press conferences, except they're for Alabama? That'll be jarring. I can imagine. It'll definitely be entertaining for some of those folks doing the beat writing for the Tide. I know whoever replaces. I mean, again, okay. Well, let me be clear. Harbaugh's still the head coach of Michigan, but if he gets replaced, I know with some. I have a safe assumption that there are a lot of beat writers in Michigan who are very going to be looking forward to a new head coach because Harbaugh was kind of a difficult one to deal with if you were a reporter on that beat. So he thinks quite highly of himself, as you may not be surprised to hear. But Caleb, what's up? You've been patient. You're up here. I see your hand up.
Hey, yeah. So can you hear me?
Sure can.
Awesome. So I know someone earlier posed the question. This is pretty unprecedented, and kind of when was the last time we saw a head coach either retire, step down, whatever, to this caliber? And I think in our lifetime, the one that really comes to mind is Pat Summitt at Tennessee. I mean, 8 national championships, 32 combined SEC championships. So just wanted to put that out there. I think that's a pretty similar case. And then as far as the head coaching search goes, I kind of agree with Dylan on this. I think Lane Kiffin is probably the most likely case, just because if you're Dan Lanning, a coach like that, like you're building your legacy or you're in the process of it. Somebody like Kirby Smart over at Georgia, and do you want to keep building the legacy that you've already started, or are you going to go try to take over a legacy that somebody else started, and you're stepping into the biggest shoes of potentially ever, and there's a lot more downside than potential upside, right? So it is a big probably the biggest coaching job out there or that we'll ever see. But I think it's going to be interesting, right? And I think that what I'm most interested to see is what is Alabama fans' expectations, going into the next season or two. Are they expecting to win 10 to 12 games with a new head coach, or are they going to be, patient with it? And then finally, in terms of a large buyout. Just for some context, Alabama or Auburn is currently paying two buyouts that combine $37 million. So I don't think $20 million buyout is going to be anything to. I don't think it's going to keep them from hiring Dan Lanning if he's open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always makes me think of Charlie Weiss, who at one point was being paid by two different teams, not the coach. Notre Dame and Kansas were both paying him simultaneously each year. So it's good work if you can get it, being fired by major programs that just pay you to stop coaching there. I see a hand up. AT Leon, gosh, I'm always mangling that one. What did you want to respond to this?
Just going back to Lane Kiffin, I'm all for Lane Kiffin. The only problem I have with Lane is the fact that can he win the big one? That's the main thing. Because we're like I said, we're going to go to 12, but it seems like Lane always has this kind of mentality of, okay, let me beat the teams I can beat, but when it comes down to the big game, when it comes down, oh, we got to play Alabama, oh, we got to play Georgia, it just seems like those games get away from him. And that's the only thing that scares me about Lane Kiffin. That's the only one thing. But everything else, I'm all for it. He's got a great offensive mind. He definitely made the offense look great under us. I just think it's the big game that gets away from me, and that's the big thing. And I mean, now that we're going to 12, it'll be a little bit different. You can lose some games, but when it comes down to playoffs and we get in there and we go up against Michigan or Ohio State, can he win those games? That's the main thing.
Yeah, for sure. And let's see, I have someone else up here. The Water Boy, good friend of ours, works some games for us. Was actually in the Rose Bowl covering it for us this season. What's on your mind, man?
Hey, well, good show. I've been listening while driving home from work, and it was.
He lives on the West Coast, everybody. He lives on the West Coast.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Driving on the 5, a lot of good commenters, a lot of people talking about Lane Kiffin, and I kind of think of like Lane as sort of the Alabama like break glass in case of emergency. Like he'll be there if they need him, if they don't find whoever their guy is that they're targeting. But I might be the one person who was not surprised by Saban's announcement today. When we were at the media day event for the Rose Bowl, Nick Saban was like the friendliest I've ever seen him. Whether it's been on TV or radio, he was engaging with everyone. He was relaxed. It was very un-Nick Saban-ish. And towards the end of the Rose Bowl, I'm on the sideline with Dennis Dodd, and they were talking about this could be Harbaugh's last game in Michigan, as Michigan was driving for the tying touchdown. And I was like, this could be Saban's last game at Alabama. And he's like, you think so? And I was like, it was really odd at media day. He was really relaxed, really friendly, really engaging. I was like, almost like he was at peace with like whatever's going to kind of happen here and enjoying himself. I was like, he was always very like professional. But at the media day, he was like really enjoying himself and really engaging. I was like, and it was just very un-Nick Saban-ish. I was like, just my feeling. And he's like, and he kind of like nodded, like, yeah, like you might be on a little something there. And then we went about like our, watching the rest of the game. But I'm not surprised by today's announcement, just because it felt like Saban already knew.
That's a fascinating insight. And I remember you said that. And then to see obviously what's occurred today, it's one of those things where now we're going to look back at some of the things that were said. And obviously several of you have brought up SEC Media Day and the things they said about maybe even being too old for this. I think a lot of that was coming. And again, we hope it's for all the best reasons. Like he just wants to step back and maybe enjoy a little bit. It's such a tough life for head coaches. I mean, especially when they're at the level of someone like Nick Saban, you're basically working with the way the college football calendar works. You're working constantly.
No days off.
No days off. The ability to take a break, especially when the transfer portal stepped in and all of that stuff. Let's see here. Mark Hill, what's going on? It's good to see you, man.
Hey, man. Good talking to you again. As always, love what you do. Hey, just want to have a couple of thoughts on both Lane Kiffin and Dan Lanning. One of the things about Alabama, I think is characteristic of the program and the fans, is they really like the sort of respectability and kind of controlled way Nick Saban kind of ran the program and whatnot. And I don't know that Lane Kiffin necessarily follows that same sort of conservative, if that's the right word, sort of approach. And I think that might be a concern about him. The thing about, and I don't know if that's right or not, that's just sort of my general impression. The other thing about Dan Lanning, though, I would look to like Harsin, Auburn bringing in Harsin, a guy from out west who like seemed to be good from a distance, but had no exposure to the South and didn't know what he was doing. Really, it was a terrible hire. Don't mean to badmouth Dan Lanning, but man, he's from clear across the country. Does he really know the South? I'd be concerned about that.
Well, he came from Georgia, so it wasn't like he's. It isn't Kalen DeBoer where because that's where Kalen DeBoer, as much as I know he gets brought up, I mean that would be a total shocker. I mean, he's a great coach, built it the right way from NAIA and had to won 3 championships there and then had to go and become a coordinator to even move up by joining an FCS program as a coordinator and worked his way up to being the head coach of Fresno State and then the head coach of obviously Washington. But no, Dan Lanning does have that SEC ties. I think that's why he comes up the way he does.
You know what? Sorry, I withdraw that. Good correction. I didn't know that.
No, I just because trust me, that's one where it isn't. That's I think why when he was hired too, it seemed like an odd hire for Oregon at the time, only because it's like, wow, Dan Lanning is crossing the country to take on Oregon when he had less ties to Oregon. So now it would be more like a homecoming, at least to the area where it seems like he was meant to be.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, man, no, but thank you. I mean, a lot of folks are probably thinking that too, who aren't necessarily as familiar with his program. Dylan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I want to go off something Mark said. One of the things I agree that Kiffin doesn't fit the profile of Alabama being that conservative type, but one of the things that would benefit him there, and we see this as an actual benefit of having Franklin, is he has such a hold in recruiting in areas outside of Pennsylvania, specifically the DMV, that if you bring Kiffin into Alabama, he also still has the Mississippi recruiting. So I think that would be a huge benefit outside of his coaching abilities.
That's a really interesting insight. I want to, I've let you up, Slim Shady Canes. You've been patient. What's on your mind here as we kind of continue this conversation, although we may slowly start to wrap this up sooner than later?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I kind of completely agree with your point that who really wants to be the guy to follow behind Nick Saban? And I'll kind of make this comparison. I think this is a little more similar to what people think to when Tom Osborne retired from Nebraska. And Nebraska fans were just not happy with Bo Pelini because he wasn't Tom Osborne, didn't have that level of success. So administratively, I've almost got to look at it like maybe we need to hire a sacrificial lamb, as much as the fans aren't going to like it, and kind of have a reset of fan expectations at the moment, because as great as Saban is, like you said, and I agree with, who wants to follow behind that?
Can you imagine that's like your pitch to the guy? Like, look, you may not win, you may lose, but we're afraid we don't want to ruin this on somebody who we might want later. So good luck.
I mean, it's
pat
not
on the butt.
ideal, but I mean, it's just kind of how you have to look at it.
No, I agree.
This fan base does not need a reset. This fan base does not need a reset. We will accept whoever comes in and know that it's a different coach, but we don't need a reset.
Well, this is a perfect example, though. I mean, Nebraska fired him after a
foundation.
national title.
You say that, and like I said, people were happy at the beginning with Bo Pelini, and now look at Nebraska for the last 15 or so, almost 20 years. I mean, Nebraska fans would give their right arm to have Bo Pelini back.
Well, I will say this. I mean, you skipped Frank Solich because he's the one who really got the short end of the stick there. Because when Osborne retired, Frank Solich was doing all right. I mean, it was he was the guy who succeeded Osborne, and he was let go after a 9-3 season. And that was just, people were stunned. I mean, yeah, he had a 7-7 season before that, but 9-3, and then that's when Nebraska, I thought, totally lost their way, because Frank Solich, he retired at Ohio, but then they went with Bill Callahan. Yeah, goodness. And then Bo Pelini, I agree. Bo Pelini at least was sort of returned to some level of stability, although not that was the problem. He still wasn't the level of Osborne, or still wasn't the level of the classic head coaches at Nebraska. And then Mike Riley. I still can't believe they hired Mike Riley. The sweetest guy, but like really not sure. Like, that'd be like, oh my goodness. And then Scott Frost didn't work out. I think Matt Rule, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think Nebraska fans may have somebody there finally who can build something there, but that is always a concern. You don't want to go the direction of Nebraska and how they handled that transition after Osborne and losing patience with Frank Solich. I thought that one made less sense than some of the other terminations because, again, like Larry Coker is my other counterexample, like followed with a loaded team, was able to win a championship in his first season, and then things just kind of petered out because when it came down to what he was building, it just wasn't quite the same.
Right, and I'll leave you with this, and I'll go back to listening. Now, being a Miami fan, Larry Coker was kind of a rush hire because everybody heard Donna Shalala at the time was wanting to bring in Barry Alvarez, but I think he was given his chance. And look at him, year after year, he just had a worse record literally every year until they fired him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. I love that you knew that. I'm sorry. I didn't even think about your username with Canes at the end. Yeah, he's a classic example of sometimes you'll get a guy who looks amazing, but it's really because he inherited an incredible team. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's see.
Osborne.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the Osborne though. That's a really good kind of case study to look at. Like Nebraska had a legendary coach, all those national championships, and then he retired. And what happened? So like, be careful, Alabama. Be careful.
Well, hopefully if they do make a hire, they'll have patience with them. I say that knowing that the amount of patience is not. I mean, some of y'all in this space sound like very patient people, but we know passionate fan bases are passionate and they can get a little wild and it can be quite difficult. And we've seen what happens.
Michigan fans wanted Harbaugh fired and almost never got the last 3 years.
Yeah, to that point exactly. I mean, being a Miami fan, I know what it's like to deal with a very impatient fan base and not giving anybody the time they need to turn the program around.
Absolutely. I'm going to let Ski Mask Murphy, I see your hand up, and then I'll probably start slowly wrapping this up.
Oh yeah, as the Michigan fan in here, I was just about to get on our history a little bit because teams get very impatient when they're used to winning, and I see that's possibly what's going to happen with Bama fans. I think people think winning is somewhat easy once you start winning a lot, and what Nick Saban's been able to do in this era of college football is something that's more than likely never going to be repeated. But as Bama fans, you guys are going to have to deal with the dog days that happened before Saban. You're going to have to deal with those again before things get back good. And like Bobak said, there might have to be a sacrificial lamb somewhere in there. Because, I mean, at Michigan, we had Bo Schembechler, great legendary coach. He retires. Gary Moeller, not good. But after Gary Moeller, we get Lloyd Carr. We get another national championship. And then after Lloyd Carr, I don't know why we did it. I still love him as a coach to this day, but we hired Renegade Rich Rodriguez, and we all know what happened there. It went horribly wrong. And so there's ups and downs. Dynasties just can't be sustained forever in sports for some reason. It's going to go down, and you guys are going to get back to it because someone's going to have to reset it.
That's an interesting claim, and I could see some hands up. I wanna get to a couple of new people I did see, and I let them up because I want to let some voices up here. Been super patient. Let's see here. Nash Hovsepian. Nash Hovsepian. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for having me. I wanted to just get an opinion from all the Bama fans. What would you guys think for the next coach to be Todd Monken if he's willing to leave the NFL?
Oh boy, Ace, I see your hand up.
Honestly, Todd Monken wouldn't be a bad decision. I mean, I don't know about full time, being like a head coach because we've never seen him be a head coach. But I mean, he's a good offensive mind. We've seen what he had with Georgia, especially Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey. He had the boys balling. But I just want to chime back in on the Michigan thing. We're not Michigan. We're built to last. Like this thing has been going for the last 17 years. Like whoever inherits this program is set up to drive the Ferrari, literally. Like they're getting the keys to the Ferrari thrown to them, and all they got to do is make sure they don't scratch it or crash it. That's literally all you got to do and take care of it. But I mean, Lane, I don't know why this like we have to understand that it's literally this is the changing of the guard and times are changing. We're going into the 12-team playoff, so a lot is going to start changing. And honestly, I would be more open to Lane because of the offensive mind. We personally, one thing that I always have disliked about Saban is he wanted a certain type of receiver. You know, Julio was really like the one big receiver that we've had, the big, strong, powerful receiver that we've had. Even in the more successful offenses, we always had a certain build of receiver. Jerry Judy, Ruggs, Henry, all of them, they all were pretty much the same build, you know. And really, right now, I think this change needs to happen because we need a more high-powered offense. We need somebody that can come in with a fresh mind. We saw what happened with Tommy Reese. We had a lot of underutilized assets this season, and I really think that somebody coming in fresh, especially with the roster that we have and the recruits that we have already in there, we can definitely keep this thing going without a hesitation of a doubt. They just gotta, like I said, come in, drive the Ferrari right, and make sure they don't crash it.
Now I'm waiting for the headline in a few years, like it's a smoldering crater found where Ferrari once stood. But hopefully not. It just sort of sets up that imagination there. Parlay Joe, and then we'll get to Dylan, Ski Masks Murphy, and then we've got Ray up here.
Nah, I was just gonna comment on like the Nebraska stuff. Hiring Dabo would be like hiring fucking Scott Frost or like Tom Herman. You're just hiring him because he went to Alabama. We don't need to do that.
Okay, and then Dylan.
Hey, I just wanted to pose a question back to Ace and all the other Alabama fans. This whole time Saban's been there, he's been able to get any player he wants, so he could get those receivers built a certain way. Do you think that Alabama's going to have a problem with whoever their next coach is getting that exact kind of guy that they need to work in their scheme?
Personally, no. I mean, even if you can look at what Lane has done in the portal, even this offseason alone, he got Nolan there. He got a couple other edge rushers there. He got their leading receiver was from the portal from this season. I mean, I think Lane is a pretty good recruiter, and like I said, the offense is his baby. So I definitely think he has no problem building offenses at all. I mean, he got Junkins out of Alabama, so you know what I'm saying. That speaks for itself.
Could you imagine Jalen Milroe with Lane Kiffin? Imagine what we could do with that. I mean, we'd be running a play action all the time. It'd be fantastic.
Greg literally said our ideal candidate will be strong in recruiting and relationship building, player development, excel in X's and O's, and the overall ability to lead this historic program. So I don't think they're looking for somebody who can't build and recruit and have those relationships to have a culture to where people are going to want to stay around or not.
And I
These are all.
think
Go ahead, Ace.
I think Lane being more on social media and things like that too, you know, kind of his antics, and I think that's what the younger crowd kind of buys into that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I think that right there alone gives him kind of an edge, especially in recruiting.
For sure, he knows how to talk to the youths.
I think Lane fits every single one of the things that they came out with, except for the culture. I just think I think he'd be the best candidate as a coach, but I don't know if he'd fit into the culture all that well.
I think you're right there. I think that would be the one where you'd want to hope that the culture that's there would mold him, or he'd kind of feel obligated to kind of go into it rather than he'd be the one to bring the culture.
Yeah, I can't remember who that coach was, but there was a rumor going around that when they got hired, they had rules about what he could tweet and who he could text. It has to be something like that with Kiffin.
Yeah, I think that's where we would potentially see Nick Saban be in the shadows for next year is
with a rolled up newspaper, like no, whap.
He'd be helping with the culture of that and just the maturing of certain aspects.
Are you saying that Lane Kiffin will no longer be tweeting at Reddit CFB? That's just unacceptable.
Well, I kind of hope he does, but and just a couple levels above, not so just wild card every day.
I love it.
I wanted to ask or just say something to Ace real quick. Ryan Day at Ohio State was given the keys to a Lambo, and there's a lot of Ohio State fans who feel like he's driving a vet right now. So You know, just because you get the Lambo doesn't mean the Lambo always keeps, you know, flying down the road.
But Ryan Day wasn't as proven as Lane was. I mean, Lane has been doing what he's doing, especially in the SEC, for quite a while now. And I mean, like they said earlier, a couple of 10-win seasons the last couple of seasons, and then, I mean, you seen what he did to Penn State. They were down a couple of players, but Penn State supposedly had one of the top defenses in the nation. They were supposed to be the elite defenses, and I mean,
it's impressive, and I was looking forward to Lane making the 12-team playoff next year. So, I mean, I'd like to hire. It's that whole, like, how does Lane actually fit into Alabama? You know, the person and the
It would
school.
be an evolution. I think it would be an evolution and maybe a necessary one because eventually you got to kind of, you know, sometimes the times change a little bit and that would potentially, again, modernize it a bit without hopefully losing the plot of the system that Nick Saban built. I mean, the good news is when somebody sees what Nick Saban did, you can't deny the results and what he did certainly sets that up. Let's hear Ski Mask. Oh, actually, yeah, Ski Mask Murphy. Then we'll get to Ray, and then we'll start wrapping this up.
But yeah, I was just going to go back to the keys to the Ferrari comment and just say everyone says that every time this happens, but there's so many examples of this doesn't really work from Jimmy Johnson in Miami, Urban Meyer at Ohio State and Florida. You got multiple times at Michigan, you got Chip Kelly at Oregon. Everyone says just give him the keys to Ferrari, but no one ever asks, does he know how to drive a Ferrari?
Absolutely. And we'll see how that one works out. Ray, what's on your mind?
Hey there. So I'm a local radio station. I'm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they had Joel Klatt on today. And they said Charlie Baker, the heads that be at the NCAA need to be on the phone to Nick Saban immediately to bring him in and kind of put a face to help fix college football between, you know, NIL, the transfer portal, and even the playoff committee, and that you could put a credible face to these overhauls. Just an interesting idea.
Absolutely. You know, that was kind of, I mean, again, this has been a very long space. So I want to be clear. It's okay if people haven't heard it earlier, but I think that makes a lot of sense. The idea of him being kind of a face or a commissioner of a college football league, especially considering, as we were saying, you know, Charlie Baker has sort of proposed what has been discussed more hypothetically for the last decade or so. The idea of the top programs kind of forming their own league. What's made it more serious now is that, you know, because there's a very huge amount of important litigation going on the sides of college football in various states that make it seem, and it seems to be the consensus everywhere at all the different athletic programs, the conferences, the NCAA, that we're going to reach a point where it's going to be not just NIL, but an actual some form of compensation. And that's something that the top programs can do. But even within FBS, there's going to be programs, especially in the G5, that won't be able to meet those obligations because to do it and to meet Title IX, you have to give it to everybody. So it's not like you can just say we're going to hand out all this money to the football team. It was somebody pointed out like a school like Stanford where they compete in like every sport. That's like their speciality. They've got 900 athletes. A school like Auburn, surprisingly Auburn, we think of it as a huge school. They only have like 300 athletes. So suddenly you have schools that have to pay out millions of dollars per year for compensation. Some will be able to, some may not be able to, and it might create some interesting questions. So that's where they're thinking of why don't we create an entirely new league, and either within the NCAA or outside the NCAA. But something like that would need a face, and no better face would be respected by everyone, coaches, athletic directors, the public, than Nick Saban. So I agree with a lot of that thought. And it's, as of right now, a hypothetical job. But if it ever comes up, oh my goodness, with Nick Saban available, he would be absolutely one of the first people anyone contacts, and they would hope he would get it. And I think a lot of people do. I would. He would be interesting. Can you imagine him as the face of college football? My goodness. I mean, he's already earned it on the field. Now he's just going to earn it in our hearts. I'm not sure how to even phrase that, but
isn't the timing on that kind of perfect? So, this hypothetical probably wouldn't even happen for 2, 3, 4 years. So he gets time off, spend time with Miss Terry, and then can come back and, really dive into it.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. He would just be ready to be relaxed. the time commitment would not be like being the head coach of Alabama, but at the same time, you can keep active, keep sharp. Doesn't have to spend all the time out there in the sun and in the summer heat. He can do it from a comfortable office, and at the same time, become a beloved figure. I think there's a lot of potential there. Well, I'm going to use this as
one last thing from me. Lane Kiffin, one way or the other, now he can finally win the SEC West. And that's all I got.
Dylan, I see your hand up. I'll let you get the last word in before we wrap this up.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up about basically the football seceding from the NCAA. But I think the NCAA will use everything in their power to stop that from happening because of the revenue streams. And if they let it happen for football, basketball will be short after, and then baseball quickly after that. So it's too big of a revenue loss for the NCAA as an organization to allow something like that to happen. But yeah, that's my only thought. Hey, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. And thank all of you who are up here and those of you who've joined us earlier. This is a great space. It was an opportunity to talk about one of the biggest stories, certainly in the last several years in college football. And gosh knows, we've had a lot of change in college football. But it was good to talk about just the relevance of Nick Saban's impending retirement. My name is Bobak Ha'Eri. I hosted this. I host the regular Twitter Spaces we do every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern here on Twitter/X, on our Reddit CFB. I also do the College Football Survivors Show podcast with the J. Raja of CBS Sports. I will try to get this recorded and turned into a part of our CFB Talk podcast series. Wherever you get your podcast, you can hear the recording of this. Want to, again, thank all of you who listened. Thank all of you who participated. You're what made college football great. I always love hearing from you. I always love talking with you. So on behalf of all of us, I'm going to hang up and listen.